Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. The frozen dragon. A new kind of flying reptile was discovered in the icy wastelands of Alberta, Canada in 2019. Paleontologists have called it a frozen dragon, an entirely new genus of pterosaur that lived alongside dinosaurs 76 million years ago. However, it didn't really live alongside them so much as it lived above them in the skies. This creature had a wingspan of at least 16 feet, but could have grown as large as 33 feet. It lived in Western Canada and looked very much like our modern idea of what a dragon should look like. According to Mike Habib from the University of Southern California, the gigantic reptile lived at a time when the landscape of Canada was temperate. It was far warmer than Alberta is today and hosted a whole ecosystem of unique dinosaurs and early animals. And soaring above them in the clouds was the frozen dragon. The bones of this mysterious pterosaur were technically discovered 3 decades ago, but it was only a few years back that researchers confirmed the creature belonged to its own genus. It was one of the very first vertebrates that took to the sky, and it's related to other pterosaurs that were even bigger. For example, the Quetzalcoatlus was another flying reptile that grew double the size of the frozen dragon. Pterosaurs as a group were the closest we have ever come on this planet to having dragons roaming around. Number 9. Our ancient brains. A shocking new study has revealed some interesting information about our brains. We finally have some answers to the age-old questions. What makes modern humans unique? And what sets us apart from our primitive relatives like the Neanderthals? We know that modern humans split in development from our famous archaic ancestors between 300,000 and 80,000 years ago. But why did we survive and they didn't? Scientists with the Max Planck Institute of Molecular Cell Biology and Genetics, or MPI-CBG, learned that modern humans evolved a single amino acid which increased the number of brain cells we could create. This small change eventually led to a cognitive separation between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, and this new study is offering the very first real proof that we as Homo sapiens were indeed smarter than Neanderthals. This discovery has come as a big surprise for a few reasons. Scientists have always been confused because our brains were almost identical in size to the brains of Neanderthals. Nobody understood how we managed to be so much more intelligent if we had the same brains. To make sense of this, scientists had to look at the genes from the Neanderthal brain. When they compared the gene TK-TL1, which is involved in producing neurons, they found a very slight difference from modern human genes. In current Homo sapiens, the gene works to create neurons at a faster pace, giving us a more powerful frontal lobe. When the Neanderthal brain grew, the neurons were created too slowly to grant any superior intelligence. But when a single gene variation occurred, humans suddenly had massive cognitive ability because of an explosion of neurons. In the end, it all came down to the developmental process of the brain. Number 8. Minerals on the Moon. In September of 2022, a massive new discovery on the Moon was announced. China has just become the 3rd country to discover a brand new lunar mineral. According to China's National Space Administration, researchers studying samples brought back from the Moon by their Chang'e 5 lunar probe found an entirely new mineral. It's the 6th new mineral to be found on the Moon, China's first, and it could have serious implications for the future of technology. The newly discovered mineral has been called Changasite Y and is currently being studied by a team from the Beijing Research Institute of Uranium Geology. This new mineral is a clear and colorless columnar crystal, but as of now, there is not really much to do with it. There's only a very small amount of this new material, and nobody is entirely sure what its properties could mean for science. However, finding new materials and minerals on the Moon is a big deal. These minerals could wind up being as important as coal was in the Industrial Revolution one day. It's even possible that they could boost deep space exploration and help push forward potential settlements on the Moon itself. Number 7. Shark scales and human teeth. Researchers have just discovered fresh evidence that teeth may have evolved from the scales of sharks. This is wildly exciting because it could confirm the outside-in hypothesis, which suggests that as scales grew along an animal's body over millions of years, they gradually moved closer to the mouth of the creature. Eventually, the scales moved all the way into the animal's jaw and then became used for eating. They were such an evolutionary success that the scales transformed into teeth and became a staple for most animals we know today. A team from Penn State University may have just confirmed this hypothesis. Todd Cook and his colleagues did this by studying the tissue structure of rostral denticles, which are spikes inside the snouts of sawfish. They look like teeth, but aren't, and are used for foraging and self-defense. When the researchers looked to the fossil record, they found an example of an extinct sawfish from 100 million years ago. This revealed clear evidence that the rostral denticles started out as modified scales. What this implies is that teeth evolved as a side effect of scaly armor. Then, as animals continued to progress over time, teeth became a staple in evolution and were passed on to newly developed species, humans included. Number 6. Mythical bronze creature. A mythical bronze creature has been unearthed in China at the mysterious archaeological site of Sanxingdui. The relic is enormous, weighing 330 pounds and measured at about 3 feet long. It's currently the largest and most impressive bronze animal statue found in the area. Sanxingdui was discovered in 1986 and has been linked to the vaguely understood Kingdom of Shu. They prospered in southwest China during the Bronze Age up until around 316 BC, when they vanished without a trace, never to pop up anywhere again. They left behind no written records, so not much is known about their history. All we have to go on are the thousands of relics excavated in their great city. Most of the artifacts found here are of weird animals, alien-like humanoids, and mythical beasts. They seem to have been a culture obsessed with myths and legends, as well as creating bizarre monsters. However, out of the 14,000 relics uncovered since the first excavation in '86, the giant bronze beast is the first of its kind. It was found in a sacrificial pit, and nobody is really sure what it is. The creature has a tree engraved on its chest, a single horn on its head, and doesn't look like anything alive today. Archaeologists still have no clue what the creepy bronze animal was ever supposed to be. Number 5. Attack of the Megalodon. 2 fossilized vertebrae from the same prehistoric whale were discovered along Calvert cliffs in Chesapeake Bay. The fossils date back 15 million years from the Miocene period. According to the researchers at the Calvert Marine Museum, the fossils belong to a rather small whale that was only about 13 feet long. However, what's both interesting and tragic is that the pair of fossils show that the animal was brutally injured, and scientists believe the attacker was most likely a megalodon. The whale had its bones crushed by the intense force of the megalodon's bite, then went on living in great pain for 2 more months before it finally succumbed to its injuries. This is a spectacular discovery because it shows the physical remains of a megalodon attack victim. We have plenty of megalodon teeth, so many that kids frequently pull them out of rivers and find them on the beach. But to find the skeleton of an animal that had its bones crushed by the biggest shark that ever lived is extraordinarily rare. Researchers at the museum say the backbones of the whale were bent with such force that the pressure smashed their neighboring vertebra. It would have been a horrible injury for the whale, and it goes to demonstrate the unstoppable power of the megalodon. Number 4. Klinefelter syndrome. The oldest case of Klinefelter syndrome has officially been identified in a 1,000-year-old Portuguese skeleton. The person who it once belonged to had suffered from a serious and rare condition that gives men an extra X chromosome. The primary effect of the syndrome is infertility, with very little production capabilities in the male reproductive organ. The syndrome also gives the victim extraordinarily small and dysfunctional testes. It occurs in every 1,000 genetic male births and also has the unfortunate side effect of impacting motor skills and mental development. The syndrome was only diagnosed recently in 1942, and scientists don't know exactly what causes it. The only factor that seems to play a big role is if the baby is born from a mother over the age of 40. The condition is incurable, and it shortens the average lifespan of the victim by roughly 2.1 years. Today, only about 0.1% of the population has a chance of being born with the syndrome. However, 1,000 years ago in northeastern Portugal, in a small town with few people, one man developed Klinefelter syndrome. Out of the 59 graves that were excavated at the Torre Velha necropolis, there was only one individual that suffered from this rare disorder. His skull showed significantly larger than normal teeth. He had a horrible gum condition that had ravaged the soft tissue of his mouth, and he was buried rather poorly. He was found in a shallow tomb without a cover and with no burial goods. Researchers don't know if this guy was an outcast in society or if his unusual condition ostracized him from the rest of civilization, but the way he was buried is pretty telling. They also aren't sure why he developed this syndrome or how far back in history it goes. Number 3. Ant raft. If you're not sure what an ant raft is, it's a really bizarre phenomenon in nature. Whenever there's a storm and the ants' nest floods, they form huge floating blobs to stay alive on the surface of the water. In a new study, scientists tried to figure out the mechanics of these incredible biological lifeboats. This study was done by engineers at the University of Colorado Boulder. According to the primary investigator, Frank Verneri, single ants are not as intelligent as people think they are. It's only when they work as a collective that they become frighteningly intelligent, putting together the brainpower of the entire community. They conducted their experiment by dropping thousands of fire ants into a bucket of water and then watched for 8 hours to see the evolution of the raft. Scientists were shocked to discover that the ants worked in harmony to construct a living boat. They found out that these ant rafts are made up of 2 layers. The bottom layer is a solid base of ants clinging to one another, creating a structurally sound platform. The second layer is made up of ants walking around on top of the platform like people walking on a ship's deck. Then, every so often, the ants on top would switch with the ants on the bottom to keep the whole thing going. Surprisingly, the engineers determined that it only takes a total of 10 ants to form one of these rafts. The ants are forced together using a fluid phenomenon known as the Cheerios Effect, and when that force becomes too strong, they cling together and become buoyant enough to float on top of the water. Number 2. Ancient Maya settlement. In late summer of 2022, archaeologists uncovered an ancient Maya settlement in central Belize. The settlement dates back 1,000 years and was identified in an old Mennonite farming community. Sadly, almost nothing is left of the settlement except white mounds of dust from where buildings once stood. About 300 years before the collapse of the Maya in 600 AD, the site was mysteriously abandoned. People had lived here for roughly 350 years, then packed up and left for unknown reasons. The archaeological evidence found here is scant at best. There are no pyramids, no plazas, and no temples that were used in human sacrifices. Instead, we see the sunken plaster foundations of houses that would have been inhabited by ordinary people. Researchers haven't found much more than vessels used for holding food and cooking supplies. This was an agricultural community, and they used the local landscape for growing crops and breeding animals. This unnamed settlement was what the real Maya civilization looked like outside the major population centers. Cities like Chichen Itza were huge and incredible, with advanced architecture and tens of thousands of people. But that was the big city. However, the real backbone of Maya society lived out in the jungle on small plots of farmland, just like this one. Number 1. One very old tooth. Archaeologists in the country of Georgia have discovered a tooth that's roughly 1.8 million years old. The implications of this tooth are astounding. It belonged to an early species of human that may have lived in one of the first prehistoric human settlements outside Africa. The tooth was found near the rural village of Orozmani, about 60 miles from the capital of Tbilisi. It's the same place where human skulls dating back to around the same time were found in the 1990s. This is currently the oldest tooth ever found outside of Africa, proving that when humans migrated off the continent, they went straight to the South Caucasus. To really drive the point home on just how important this discovery is, we need to understand that the oldest human fossils come from Ethiopia and are 2.8 million years old. Scientists have also uncovered the remnants of tools dated roughly 2.1 million years old in China. However, the only truly ancient human remains outside Africa have been found in Georgia, making it a cradle of prehistoric human life. Georgia marks the beginning of humanity's domination of the planet. Thanks for watching! Which of these incredible new discoveries did you find the most fascinating? Let us all know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. See you soon! Bye!